Hello everyone, this is Clonation again with another video, and this time I'm going to review the third Dark Souls game. But it's not the third one in the Souls series, but it's the third one I played, so let's talk about it. Dark Souls 3. Now Dark Souls 3 is, I'm pretty sure it's the 5th game in the Souls series. It goes Demon Souls, then Dark Souls 1, Dark Souls 2, and then Bloodborne, and then Dark Souls 3. So I'm guessing it's the 5th one that they made. I didn't play it in that particular order. I just finished Demon Souls and I am playing Bloodborne right now. But anyways, this game takes what it had in the two previous games and made it better. And let's start talking about the gameplay in this game. The gameplay is smooth, and I really enjoyed how they made it this smooth. It feels natural, and that's what I loved about this game. It has the same type of gameplay as Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 2 has, but it feels way smoother. The fighting mechanics feels way smoother. It's the same controls, same everything with that, but you swing it with ease, and it just makes this game wonderful and a breath of fresh air to play. The similarities with Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 2 with this game is starting with, if you become hollow, which means you died, you do lose some health, just like Dark Souls 2. But instead of gradually losing health each time you die, you just lose 30% of your health through the game. Which is better that way, but you could use some humanity to bring your health back up. And I really like that mechanic than what they had in Dark Souls 2. Dark Souls 2 was a joke when it came to that. And the other similarities is, with Dark Souls 1, you could level up your bonfire. In this one, you can too in the hub area, but only that bonfire. And it makes it so your potions that you take restores your health even more than previously. And you could also level up your Estus flask, I think that's what you call it, which is your potions. And when you upgrade it, you get to use more potions during a fight, and it makes it so much unique that it takes the good qualities of Dark Souls 1 and the good qualities of Dark Souls 2 when it comes to gameplay and put it together. They don't repeat the mistakes they made, and this is literally proof that they learned from the mistakes and made a better gameplay experience. You could level up more of your stats, it feels like, and your armor and your weapons are pretty much the same, but those are the only similarities that continues through the Souls games, well, the Dark Souls versions, and that's what I loved about this gameplay. And I will give gameplay a 10 out of 10 with great gameplay. Now, let's start talking about the levels. Now, the levels in this game are pretty similar. They don't have an extinct flavor when you go through these levels. There's a few that you might recognize that you enjoyed. The hub area is probably the most recognizable one, which I think is one of the best hub areas in the Souls series, the one I enjoyed the most, besides Demon Souls Remake. I haven't played Sekiro or Elden Ring yet, so does not really rely heavily on the levels. I think Dark Souls 1 and 2 did better with levels a little bit. Kinda. I think the levels in this one is better than Dark Souls 2. The villains, the enemies in this game are way better than the other two Dark Souls. The enemies in this game are fantastic. They feel like mini bosses sometimes when you go through these levels. Instead of big hordes of enemies coming at you at once, it really feels like a better game than Dark Souls 2. The enemies are way harder because they feel like mini bosses. Some people say Dark Souls 2 is harder because of the hordes of enemies, but I had more trouble with Dark Souls 3. And I played 2 other Souls games before this one. So it wasn't my first Souls game, but it was definitely my first really difficult one. And that's what I love about these levels, is that the enemies are the one that brings the levels to life. But the designs of the levels lost me. They're not unique and they're not creative. Like the first 2 Dark Souls games, they're pretty creative, they're pretty diverse. This one just feels like the same exact level on most of them. So, with levels, I'll have to give it a 7 out of 10. I know it's better than Dark Souls 2's because of the hordes of enemies brought it down a little bit from Dark Souls 2 and made it less fun. This one was hard, but funner. And that's what I enjoyed about these levels. Now, let's get to the best part about this game. The bosses. Now, these bosses are unique. There's only 19 of them, and they're really, really difficult. There's a couple that are pretty easy, which is just a few set of bosses. But this series, out of all the Souls games I've played so far, this series has the hardest bosses in my opinion. And if I ever did a top 10 list, most of the bosses from Dark Souls 3 will be on it. Because these bosses are ridiculously hard. Like Nameless King, for example. He's optional, but he's the hardest boss in the Souls series so far that I played. Besides the final boss in Dark Souls 3. Like 2 of the hardest bosses is the final boss and Nameless King. And that's what makes this game great. These bosses are diverse. I can remember each one, and they're so great. And I love them. Now there is a couple bosses that I absolutely don't like. Osiris, for example. Screw that boss. He's not hard. He's hell of annoying. But every Souls game has an annoying boss here and there. And I'll have to say, this game has the best boss lineup out of the Souls series so far. And I really enjoyed this game. And I just beat Demon Souls and I'm playing Bloodborne right now. And Dark Souls 3 still has the best bosses to date so far. Until I play the last 2. So, bosses, I'll have to give them a 10 out of 10. It's in my top favorite game when it comes to bosses. It's not my favorite game when it comes to bosses, but it's definitely in my top 3 or top 5. And that's what I really enjoyed about this game. It's the gameplay and the bosses. And it made this a unique experience, and I enjoyed this game. The one I didn't really want to rush. Dark Souls 1 I really enjoyed too. Dark Souls 2 I tried to rush the whole thing because I didn't enjoy it as much. But Dark Souls 3 was fantastic, and it will probably be the first Souls game I'll go back to if I go back to any of them so far. So, Dark Souls 3, let me give it a all-around ranking. I will give it a 9.2 out of 10. The reason it's not a 10 out of 10 is because of the levels. The levels would have made it better if they were better. Just because of that, I had to bring it down a tiny bit, but still in the ballpark. This game did have some flaws, but overall, it's a fantastic experience, and I would recommend playing this. Don't play as your first Souls game because it is one of the hardest, but I would recommend playing Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 2 just to get into this one. Or play Dark Souls 1 and skip Dark Souls 2. And this game, I would recommend playing. Have you guys played Dark Souls 3? Leave it down in the comments below. Which one's your favorite Souls game? I haven't played Sekiro or Elden Ring yet, but I'll get to those after Bloodborne. So yeah, if you guys like this video, please press the like button and please subscribe. And like always, this is Clawdnation Reviews, and I'll see you all next time.